All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the Small Business Boot Camp and Resource Collective. I'm Robert Theobald, the Small Business Ombudsman and Vice President of Small Business Services for the Arizona Commerce Authority. I want to start by thanking all of our community partners that help us do these boot camp sessions. This is just a sample of the community partners, and we could not do it without them. Their expertise and resources have been very helpful in providing these sessions for you each and every day. This Small Business Boot Camp is designed to help small businesses return stronger than ever from the COVID crisis. And as I mentioned, it's a statewide initiative supported by our community partners. And it's a daily boot camp through July and a resource collective. So all the sessions, we've been doing them Monday through Friday since the beginning of May. And all those sessions can be found, the recordings of the previous sessions can be found on our website. And the registration for additional upcoming sessions can also be found on the website. Through that webpage, you can also find the Resource Collective, which is all the materials, tools, and guides that have been provided by all our community partners for supporting small businesses throughout the state. So this week, we're on session 53, Overcoming Obstacles in Your Business. We're looking forward to the session today. Tomorrow we have Planning for Maximum Paycheck Protection Program Loan Forgiveness, and then Friday is How to Produce Your Own Marketing Videos. This week we've had two great sessions already with Power Effective Employee Engagement and How to Make Every Pitch Count. Talked a lot about branding in that session yesterday. So you can go back, those sessions are posted, or you can go on to the website and register for the following sessions. Quick updates on PPP. As many of you know, that the PPP program was extended. It originally closed at the end of June, but has been extended until August 8th. With that, just some numbers we were sharing that we received from the SBA, that there are 81,000 PPP loans for over $8.6 billion in Arizona. And for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, Arizona received almost 40,000, 39,270 loans for over $2.3 billion. Now, another thing to note is the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance that was being given. That has concluded on July 11th. The SBA maxed out their funding for that and awarded over $20 billion throughout the country in advances. Some other tools available to small businesses. There's the Small Business Services, the ACA, and we can help with navigating the SBA, with the Small Business Development Centers, who are a great partner of ours, local banks, and other items. Our Workforce Division can help with employers with their workforce needs, whether it's hiring or training. They can support your growth there. And then our Arizona Manufacturing Extension Partnership, the Arizona MEP, they are a resource for all the manufacturers out there, small to medium-sized manufacturers wanting to grow and expand their business. A quick shout out, a reminder for the state's ArizonaTogether.org website for all things COVID-19 regarding the state. And this is just a list of some of the guides on our Resource Collective from our community partners. There's guides for reopening, cleanliness standards, and they range from construction, salons, restaurants, retail. There's a guide that manufacturing to help your business work through this COVID crisis. Another way to stay informed and stay updated with all the business resources that are available during this COVID crisis is through our own website, azcommerce.com/COVID-19. So today's speaker, we have Chris Spears. He's a coach and facilitator at Traction Point, and we're excited to have Chris with us today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Chris. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and he's going to be able to share his, and we will get started. Thank you, Chris.
Yep, it's now letting me share my screen. I'll be right in there. Great. Everybody seeing that okay?
Yep.
Great. Well, good morning, everybody. Really pleased to be here, and thank you for having me come, Rand. I'm looking forward to the conversation this morning. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about how to really solve the issues that your business is facing. And I think that word really is an important one. As we go from day to day in our businesses, pretty much every day is resolving issues. And some days you walk into the office and are not quite sure, or walk in to open your computer, as the case may be, and you don't know what the issues are going to be. But that's really what we do, is we solve a lot of problems. We work on issues. Today's presentation is about how to work through and resolve those issues that come up. I say in a world filled with issues, let's look at some of the issues that we face from day to day. There's civil unrest, and this is old news now, but what a great impact, a huge impact the worldwide pandemic has had. I want you to think about it right down to a more micro level. Think about your day-to-day work and your day-to-day business. Sometimes do you feel like your direction is foggy, not knowing what's next or where to go? I think that gets referred to sometimes as the fog of war, and I think that's an interesting description. What about the people that you work with, the people on your team? I hear this from entrepreneurs sometimes, that they really get frustrated that some of the people in their organization don't seem as engaged as they are. So that's what this picture represents, is people engaged with other things besides the core focus of what the business is trying to achieve. Sometimes there are disagreements and arguments. Sometimes we have an issue because either ourselves or people on our team are not well prepared. Sometimes we have issues because the business is not executing the way that we had planned. Here's kind of a silly example, but do you think that the owner of this restaurant feels pleased with the way that the wait staff and the host executed on their process for serving customers in this restaurant? That is an issue that has financial impact for this business. What this represents is, as we go on our journey from day to day, sometimes we just get stuck. We get stuck in a rut. We feel like we're spinning our wheels. The same stuff that we used to do doesn't seem to be working anymore. We've hit a ceiling, or we've gotten stuck in the mud. I'll just mention one other thing. This is a frequently cited study. This really goes back to a Gallup poll from a few years ago that just really talks about employee engagement, and how, more than half of the people in the workforce, according to this survey, are not engaged. And in fact, nearly 20% are actively disengaged, meaning that not only are they really not pulling for the objectives of the business, but they are, actively being naysayers and fighting against it. I say that low employee engagement should really be called leadership malpractice. So what I want to talk to you today is about one really important leadership ability that's going to help you be a really powerful leader. And all those situations that we talked about before give you some tools and some disciplines to really help you think about the issues that you're facing, and then not just think about them, but have a real powerful tool that helps you to get them out of your head, processed by you and your team, and resolved for good, for the greater good of your business. So what does it mean to be that kind of a leader? What do great leaders do? This is what you're looking for in your business. You're leading a team to bigger and better things, bigger and better market share, bigger and better products, bigger and better revenue. As you're thinking about how you do that from day to day, the fact is that you've got to break through a lot of barriers, and you've got to capture opportunities, and you've got to share a lot of ideas. And so I really want to frame this up to help all of us to see that really the kind of issues that you want to process are not just problems. You know, it's not just the surprising customer service issue or the product quality issue, the problems. Those qualify as barriers. But think about opportunities you have, new market opportunities, new product opportunities, new partnership opportunities and customers. And think about the great ideas that you have in the middle of the night, and you think to yourself, yeah, I got to remember to go do something about that. And it just kind of stays bouncing around in your head for a few days or a few weeks or a few years. You know, how do you get your greatest ideas out of your head and into the real world? So you're working to get your team bigger and better, and you're doing that by resolving these kinds of issues. Ideas, opportunities, problems are the things that you're facing. You're identifying and resolving these issues. So I want to propose to you a little model. Some of you who might be familiar with the entrepreneurial operating system, I'm an entrepreneurial operating system coach, and we call it EOS for short. The EOS model kind of talks about the key or the core components of your business. And so when you think about your business, I just want to introduce the core components of your business, because what I find as a coach is that every issue in every business that I work with stems from weakness in one of these areas of the business. You know, look at these areas of your business. The key components of your business are having a strong vision, so that you and everybody on your team knows where the business is going and has a really good idea, some great plans that show how you're going to get there. Every great business has great people. You got to have great people to go execute on a powerful vision, and you want to make sure that the right people are in the right seats in your business. You want to be running your business on data. And so having a powerful scorecard where you can run the business with a really good view of what's happening from week to week, so you can run your business on data rather than on ego and emotion and gut feeling, is a really powerful capability in your business. Now, something happens, and that is when you got a really strong vision and great people and you're running the business on data, that just makes all of the issues all the more visible. You know, you can see when your data is off. You can see when there's an issue with people. You can see when people don't understand the vision for where you're going and how you're going to get there. So issue resolution, being able to see the issues and resolve them for the greater good of the business, becomes a critical component of your business. You got to have good processes. So, you know, think about the handful of key processes you have to run your business, the way that you find and train and bring in the best people, the way you market, the way you sell, your operations process for delivering service or creating product, your accounting and finance processes, your customer service processes. You've got a handful of key processes, and making sure that you do those the right way and the best way every time is what makes the business scalable, and it's what makes your business profitable. And finally, your business has to get traction. I say that vision without traction is just hallucination. So in order to get traction, you've got to be actively and aggressively working toward your vision and your measurable key milestones for achieving your annual plan. And everybody in your company and everybody on your team is doing that with discipline and accountability. So in that model, we've talked about vision, people, and data. Really, when you look at this, resolving issues in every one of these areas of your business becomes one of the key things that you as a leader do. And so what I'm about to teach you is a tool that's ubiquitous for every component of your business. What I really teach entrepreneurs to do as an EOS implementer is how to resolve issues in every component of your business. Because what I find is that as you get stronger and stronger as an organization in every one of these components of your business, the issues that have their root cause in weakness in these key areas of your business, those issues just start to melt away as you really strengthen your capability in each one of these key areas of your business. So let's talk about solving issues. I'm going to talk to you this morning about a discipline and a tool. The discipline that we're going to talk about is something that we call the issues list. And the tool that I'll be teaching you this morning is a tool called the issue solving track. So let's talk about the discipline first. The discipline of the issues list. Let's talk about what is an issue. We've already done this a little bit, but an issue is any problem or barrier or obstacle that you're facing. We also throw into the category of an issue an opportunity. Until you decide to do something with that opportunity, it's still an issue that you haven't decided on yet. An issue is also an idea. That's something that you've thought about in your mind, but until you get it out of your head, it's an issue. We also say that an issue might be something that you need to share, and it's an issue when you feel like there's something that you need to know from a team member or a trusted partner or an advisor or a vendor that you don't know. So the discipline is to have an issues list and to get things out of your head and onto the issues list. I love this quote by David Allen. He's the author of the book Getting Things Done and kind of a productivity expert. He said, your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them. And I love that idea, kind of this, many of us in the tech industry, I kind of come from a tech background and really love this idea that if I'm spending processing power from my brain, carrying around ideas and issues that I hope to address later, I'm burning valuable CPU power, dragging that stuff around that could be applied towards real problem solving and real creativity. So getting things out of your head and onto paper is the first really discipline. And when we do that with a team, you have a common place. You could do that as easily as just having a Google Doc or a Google Sheet that you call the issues list. And you and your leadership team or you and your founding partners have got the issues list. And during the week, whenever you come up with a barrier or an idea or a problem, something you need to know or something you need to share, you put it on the issues list. You just go and put 5 to 7 words that kind of are enough of a reminder that you can then tee up that idea when you're with your team so that you can process it together. And I'll show you how to do that here in a minute. So, say you've got an issues list with 18 or 20 things on it. What I'm going to do now is just teach you the tool, and then we'll go through a just kind of a scenario to show you how the tool works in practice. It's called the issue solving track, and I call it IDS for short. There's another 3-letter acronym for you, but I stands for identify. Identify the root cause of the issue. D stands for discuss, and S stands for solve. And what I find when I'm working with most leaders and most leadership teams and most people who go to meetings, whenever I work with a new client, I have a meeting with them on the first day, and I ask the whole leadership team, hey, how are you guys feeling about your meetings? Do you feel like you're having productive meetings? And you know, the answers kind of run the gamut. Some teams are having pretty good meetings, but more frequently than not, I'm hearing leaders say, we really don't like our meetings. We don't feel like they're productive. Sometimes I dread going and wasting an hour and a half when we're really not making a lot of progress. And the reason teams aren't making a lot of progress is because they spend a lot of time discussing. In fact, they discuss and discuss and discuss issues, and rarely do they push each other, and rarely do they push themselves hard to go upstream, truly dig down into the organization or into the root cause of the issue. They're not asking each other why. They're not asking each other, are we really working on the root cause? I'm sure that you can all think of examples of where an issue comes up, and in our fast food, instant gratification, we got to be quick. You know, as a leader in a company, you know that you have to solve issues fast. And we get into that mode, and our brain tries to shortcut it, and we take our very first perception and we go to work on it. And more times than not, when you do that, you're solving the wrong problem. When you take a moment and you push hard and you ask why, you know, whether you follow the 5 whys or you just ask why is this issue happening several times, and honestly dig into it, you can identify the root cause and really work on the true root cause. Make sure you're working on the right problem to start with. And then, you know, your discussion is not just a bunch of aimless kind of figuring out the boundaries of this issue. It's really the discussion then turns to what are we going to do to solve this real issue that we've identified? What are the possibilities? What are the possible ways that we can make this issue go away forever? And then we move into solve. And solve is really the only way to solve an issue is for somebody to do something. It's very rare. I wish that I could solve all my problems by just identifying and discussing them. You know, all problems have to have some action. And so the outcome of a solve is that somebody takes a to-do. And we'll talk about how that works with your team here in just a minute. So identify, discuss, and solve is a powerful methodology. It's an easy thing to remember. When you're solving an issue in your next meeting, I want you to think of that acronym and just let that be a guide for how you process any issue that comes up in your meeting. And you as a leader in your business have got to push and make sure that you identify, then discuss the possibilities of how you're going to solve it, and then make sure that there's a to-do that somebody owns to go make that problem go away forever for the greater good of your business. And by the way, I'll show you a way that you can hold each other accountable for actually executing on that solve. So this is how it works in practice. We're back to our 18 issue list. And sometimes a leadership team might make the mistake of saying, okay, we got a bunch of issues to work through today. Let's take it from the top. Okay, issue number 1. I'm telling you that that's a huge mistake. When you have a big issues list, you gotta identify the top issue on the list. So if the top issue is issue number 14, we start by priority and magnitude of impact on the business. So I ask a team, and when I facilitate teams doing an IDS session, I say, what are the most important issues in the business that you must solve this week? 1, 2, 3. And I want to see the top three issues get identified from the issues list. Once we identify issue number one, we then go to work and we IDS issue number one. You know, I want to mention just the important psychology of this. This isn't just about prioritizing to find the most important things, which obviously we want to do because we want to spend our time doing the most important, most impactful things that are going to have an impact on our business. But for making your meeting run well, if I'm sitting there with a team in front of a list of issues, and most people can tell that issue number 5 on the list is really a critical one, how do you think everybody's attention is going to be focused while we're kind of grinding our way through issues 1 through 4? People are going to be disconnected and disengaged. Think back to that picture at the beginning of the presentation about people checking their phones. You want to make sure that when you're in issue resolution mode, when you're working issues with your team, that everybody is really actively engaged. In fact, you expect it, you demand it, that everybody's pushing because if these are really issues for your business, that's the most important thing that you guys could be doing, is really getting good solutions to the issues that you're facing. I talked about the idea that you should put 5 to 7 words on your issues list. So, you know, when you're working through an issue, we say, okay, whose issue is this? Tee it up. And so 5 to 7 words, if I just take those at face value, it's probably going to lead me down a path that is not really the root cause of the issue. And so the person whose issue it is, as a facilitator of a meeting, you've got to say, tell me what the issue is in 1 sentence with no commas. What do you need from the team today? And so really just teeing up the issue in a powerful way, and whoever issue it is, ensuring that they tee it up in a way that they've kind of given their best effort to really thinking through what the issue is. Then the rest of the team responds with you know, pushing and kind of making sure that we've gotten to the root cause of the issue. So here's some key tips for what you got to do to identify the root cause of an issue. You've got to ask, you know, what is the real issue? You're going to say things like, I'm not hearing the real issue. You know, how many times in a meeting do you just kind of let it ride? When somebody's got the floor, we'll let them kind of go and talk and pontificate. That only leads to, remember that slide with the discuss part being circled in red? You know, you don't want to just discuss and discuss and discuss. You've got to push and say, I'm not hearing the real issue. You know, that's the kind of relationship you've got to have with everybody on your team, is be able to push that way. What is the root cause? Think about the EOS model that I showed to you. You know, what I mean by that is ask yourself, which core component of my business is weak right now that's allowing this issue to be a problem for us? Have I got a people problem? Have I got a data problem, or is the data showing me a problem? Have I got a process problem? Are we not holding people accountable to get traction? So thinking through the model can sometimes help you identify root cause and maybe even a solution to the problem. You know, there's a lot of power in asking clarifying questions. So questioning a lot, you know, problems get solved when there's a good question, and you just got to watch for the jump to a solve. Everybody's tempted to jump into solve mode really fast. You've got to be aware of that and not just go with it, but push and make sure that you're talking about and resolving the right issue. There are some reasons why you don't identify the right issue, and it's because you and your team are afraid of the real answer, and you're afraid of the work that it's going to take to resolve the real issue. That's another reason that teams let themselves get into discuss, discuss, discuss mode, is because there's fear. Just admit it and embrace the challenge of the fear, and get after your big, meaty, hairy issues. And remember, you can't scare somebody into not being afraid. You know, the antidote for fear is love and partnership and great trust in your leadership team. When you can develop that kind of trust in your leadership team, there's nothing to be afraid of. You guys can go and attack any big, hairy issue together as you develop that trust, and just know that your objective, all of you, is to go do the right thing for the greater good of the business. No posturing, no politicking, no positioning. It's doing what's right for the business. I love this quote. This is from a fellow EOS implementer. He said, "An issue well stated is half solved." And so that's just another pitch to you for really make sure that you understand the issue and it's well stated, because when you're working on the right question, you're already most of the way there. Okay, let's move on to discuss. And how do you effectively discuss an issue now that you've identified what it is? You know, the fact is that if you've really gotten the issue identified well, the discuss part can be pretty quick. It's, again, real open and honest communication. And it's also you as a leader and a facilitator of an IDS session, watching and ensuring that you're getting input and feedback from everybody. No abstaining. You know, when you've got somebody who's quietly sitting there watching a discussion go down, you can pretty much know that they don't see it, or they're not in agreement or something. So those people who are being quiet have got to be challenged. And by the same token, you can't have people politicking. In the discuss portion, you've got to hold each other accountable for saying things only once, because more than once is politicking. You know, when we start repeating ourselves, we say that that's politicking. So you're holding each other accountable in a good IDS session to not just kind of keep beating a dead horse. The other thing that you got to watch out for is a tangent. So these words are totally appropriate in an IDS session. You should yourself, or you should encourage members of your team to yell tangent alert when you get off topic and you stop working on the real issue. Sometimes people will go off on a tangent because they're afraid, or, you know, if it's really a real issue, just say that's a tangent. Let's add that one separately to the issues list, and we'll process that later and get back to it. Your job as a facilitator of a good discussion is to steer any mouth that's not getting closer to solved. So you're actively facilitating discussion by pushing and watching for what really needs to happen to get to the root cause of the issue and to get to a really good solution. You say things like, "This is getting redundant. Does anyone have anything new to add?" Or when somebody's kind of pontificating about something, you've got to say, "Let's land the plane. You know, it's time to bring this down to the ground." And if somebody's been politicking, you know, in good humor with tongue in cheek, say, "Thank you, Governor Ducey." You know, you've got to identify politicking when it happens, so that over time, you as a leadership team get better and better at the way that you can process issues together. Now, finally, when you move to solve, and we're coming into the end of the presentation here, the solve is really your plan of attack that's going to make that issue go away forever. How are you going to take advantage of that opportunity? What are you going to do next for that idea? What are you going to do to knock down that barrier? What will you do about it? Another great way to think about this is when you think about where the issue is stemming from, usually the one who should have something to say and weigh in about it is the person who's part of the business this issue has a root in. So you got to go to that leader. If I've got a sales issue, I go to my sales leader and I say, "Okay, I think we've identified the problem. What do you think is the right solution?" Start with the right leader to propose a solution. And 80% of the time, the team will agree because you've done a good job identifying and discussing. 80% of the time, the team will agree because you've done a good job identifying and discussing. we have this seat or a role that we talk about in entrepreneurial operating system called the integrator. And the integrator is the person who really is kind of watching every function in the business. That could be a founder in a small business. It could be a second in command in a little bit bigger business. This is frequently like a COO kind of a role where, really watching over the whole value chain of the business. And we say, when there's a tie, that there has to be somebody who's authorized to be the tiebreaker. So sometimes that's the visionary founder, sometimes that's the integrator. Most times I recommend that it's that integrator who makes the call when everybody doesn't agree. So that helps you to not have a deadlock on what you're going to do, but the team has to decide. You don't put it off, you don't take it offline, you don't say we need more info or more data, or sometimes you do, but that's the next step, and then everybody's accountable for it at the next meeting. So we don't want to take it offline. So here's how you get to the next step. We've just IDS'd issue number 1, and then we move on to issue number 2, and we IDS issue number 2, and we go to issue number 3, and we IDS issue number 3. Then we look at our watch and we say, yep, we've got 20 more minutes to IDS in our planned time together today. Let's identify the next 3. So we just identify the next most important things, 1, 2, 3, and we go to work and IDS issue number 1. And you rinse and repeat until you make it through your issues list, or until you run out of time for that week's IDS session with your leadership team. So in a world filled with issues, you've got to lead with power to bigger and better things. And the way that you're going to do that is by really being effective at resolving issues. That is what I have for you today. And I appreciate your time, and I'm ready for your questions.
All right, thank you, Chris. For the attendees, please post your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Chris, one question I have is, what can an owner, a small business owner, do to help create the trust with their team that they can actually provide the feedback in a meeting and not feel like they're going to be picked on or retaliated against for sharing that open opinion?
Yeah, I think that's really foundational. I mean, if you're going to grow and scale a business, everybody knows that you got to have good people to do that, and having a good team that trusts each other is foundational to being innovative and really solving issues together. My recommendation that comes to mind immediately is Patrick Lencioni's work, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And what you're talking about, Robert, is really establishing a foundation of trust. And, there are several things that you can do as trust builders, but, the reason teams aren't sometimes open and honest with each other is because they, I'm just going to say it, they haven't been willing to get naked. And what I mean by that is, a good team has got to really know each other. Some of you might be familiar with a model called the Johari Window. And the Johari Window is kind of a 4 quadrant model. And all it really talks about is kind of this idea that there are things that you know about yourself, but others don't know about you. And getting things you know about yourself that others don't know about you out into the open is one of the things that creates trust. It's people knowing about who you are and about your background. There's the other aspect of the Johari Window that says, there are things about me that I don't know about myself, but everybody else knows. We call those our blind spots. And so facilitating an environment where people can safely tell me what my blind spot is. I facilitate that in sessions with groups we do a 1 thing exercise where, everybody goes around the room and we say, hey, Chris, here's 1 thing that I really need you to do for the greater good of the business. And that 1 thing that I really need to do, I hear it a lot, is, hey, Chris, one thing I really need you to do is to speak up more and to speak up faster. So this is kind of a long answer to your question, Bob, but the answer is that in order to have that kind of open, honest discussion without fear of retribution, you as a leader have got to create that kind of trusting environment in your business. And you do that by deliberately taking the time to share with each other, and maybe even do an exercise like that one thing exercise, so that everybody knows what everybody else is. You know, the one thing exercise always points out a blind spot or a weakness. And when I can be honest about what my blind spot is and others on my team can help me with it, then we know as a leadership team that we are just, you know we got weaknesses, but the only reason I'm there on the team is because I also have great strengths to bring to the team. Let's work together and we're going to figure this out together. A lot of trust.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a question on here, and it's a great question. It says, I am a team of one. I think some of the ideas are great. However, what do you suggest for a team of one?
My suggestion for a team of one is a concept that in entrepreneurial operating system, I refer to as a clarity break. So for a team of one, you've got to go have your own IDS session. And a clarity break is a sacred time. I call it sacred because you're going to put it on your calendar for an hour or 90 minutes, and you go down and you get out of your natural habitat. So you don't go to your office, you don't go to the same chair that you sit in at home when you're on a web conference. You get out of your natural habitat where you can be more aware and your mind will open up to new inputs. And you sit there with a pad of paper and you IDS on your own. You identify issues, you discuss them with yourself, and you come up with a good solve. And that's my suggestion, is you've got to take the time. I call it a clarity break to go do that. Leaders that I work with and encourage to do that will schedule a clarity break on a regular basis. I have some who do it daily for a short period of time, and I have others who actually schedule an hour or two every week for their clarity break, and they don't miss it. That's why I say it's sacred time, is you got to keep that appointment. That's not slush that gets kind of flexed into by something else that comes up. You gotta keep that one.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. We have another question. It's a little deeper question. This is from David. It says, are there quantitative weights to the EOS model entrepreneurs can use to keep score, measuring our results, whether it's closing on a project or achieving some competitive advantage for the business? How do we adjust our scores quantitatively so that we may have more measurable ways of keeping account of our progress?
Yeah, I guess the way I would answer that is that every leadership team develops their own scorecard. So you remember that I said one of the key core components of your business is the way you work with and think about data. The way I facilitate with teams to help them come up with a valuable scorecard is really just to think of the 5 to 15 things that are going to be most impactful measures that you need to see at a glance to know how your business is doing from week to week. So first of all, I encourage teams to create weekly measures. You don't want to do a monthly measure, and sometimes a daily measure, at least for a team, can be too much. So I like to think about your data in terms of a 13-week rolling kind of a data snapshot. Now, in terms of actually weighted, one thing that I do with my teams is we go through and score their strength in each of the key components of their business. So we may decide that there are some things that we need to focus on in the business, in a part of the business that's weak, that becomes something on the scorecard that we're paying attention to over the course of the quarter. So the way I can answer that generally without the specifics of the situation is to say that, your scorecard can be a little bit fluid. It shouldn't be too big of a scorecard, though. That's why I said 5 to 15. If you're going to review a scorecard, you've got to make sure that it's not bogged down with 30 different items on a scorecard, because that becomes incomprehensible. So I don't know if that's helpful, but it's lead measures on a scorecard, and it's I guess I'll say one more thing. It's when you think about your value chain, I want you to think about your customer experience, how that customer meets you for the first time from marketing, and then goes through your sales process, and then they go through onboarding and startup, and then they have customer success and customer service, things that you're working on them with, maybe upsell, cross-sell opportunities, and you've got accounting and finance. As you think about through that whole value chain and all of your touch points with the customer, my recommendation is that you figure out what are the ways that you can quantify your value delivery in each part of that value chain, and then you might give weight to places that are broken, and things that you're working to really solve, the place where the customer service issues might be coming up, maybe things that you give more weight to in terms of just your focus.
We had another question pop in. All right, it says, when you're working with organizations with a team of one, is it fair to say a lot of the EOS challenges of one-team organizations is having a key man insurance to succumb to the pitfalls and challenges of potential restructuring plans or enhancements to accommodate additional personnel?
Yeah, so the question I'm hearing is about key man insurance for a one-man operation. I think so. I think in many ways that's kind of a personal question. If you've got an operation that is serving a client base, and I don't know. I think that's kind of a personal question. I mean, if something happens to you as the one person who can deliver the value that your customers are expecting, that's a risk that would be a good one to talk to a qualified insurance professional about, and kind of weigh out that risk. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think that that's an important factor, and I do refer a lot of my clients to financial, insurance, legal, tax advice to really go make sure that they've got things in order that way.
Okay, excellent. Again, if you have any other questions, those are throw those questions in the Q&A box. Chris, in the past, I've experienced this in meetings where you're trying to get to that, identify the key issue, that real issue, but it doesn't seem like we're digging deep enough or asking enough whys. What are some tactics, some additional tactics that they can take, or methods to help really get to the root cause or the root issue when you're in these meetings?
The best thing that I've found, Bob, is just reiterate a couple of things that I mentioned. Is number one, just look at your business and your business model and ask, where is this coming from? Is it a people issue? Is it a process issue? And I think sometimes just kind of having a checklist. I think sometimes when you're in the heat of the moment with a meaty challenge or a problem, it can kind of blind you just because it's big and hairy and scary. And so when you can step away from that and kind of checklist yourself a little bit by looking at, what are the core components of our business and where is this thing really coming from, it's a good way to approach it. And then I like the 5 whys model. And, that's essentially, when an issue gets put on the table, you ask yourself, why is that happening? And sometimes the answer to that is still not all the way there. I'd say most of the time. And you got to just keep asking, why does that happen? Why does that happen? And that's a good way to just keep digging until you can get to there's nothing else beyond that, and then you can usually get to the root cause that way.
Excellent, thank you. We don't have any more questions at the moment. What I'd like to do, Chris, is just give you another minute or two, share your closing thoughts, and then we will wrap up today's session.
Great. Well, one thought that I've had is I want to just illuminate a little bit this idea that this issue solving track, or IDS, is something that happens as part of your regular leadership team meeting. So if you don't have a regular leadership team meeting, I'm going to tell you to get one where you just schedule 90 minutes every week, same day, same time, every week is the right methodology for that. If you're constantly trying to figure out, hey, when's a good time for us to meet, that just brings a lot of administrative drag to the way you're running your business. So decide when you're going to meet together and have a regular cadence for doing IDS together. And, you know, when I coach teams, I tell them, hey, we're going to get together in a 90-minute meeting. We're going to spend 5 minutes looking at the scorecard. Wow, I had never been in a meeting where we could only spend 5 minutes on the scorecard. Usually the scorecard turns into a tap dance pontification around about why we are or why we are not hitting numbers on the scorecard. You know, you got to hold each other to just saying, is that number on track or is it off track? And if something is off track, then we'll drop it down to the issues list, and we can talk about that later and decide if that's something we want to process in our meeting today. So think about that when you're having your meeting together. Your issue processing happens in one part of the meeting, but you still have a part of your meeting where you're holding each other accountable for, you know, are we hitting the key numbers, the key measures on our scorecard? Is everybody accomplishing their key deliverables for the quarter? In EOS, we call those rocks. We want to know, are your rocks on track or are they off track? If I got a rock that's one of the most important things that's got to happen for the business this quarter that's off track, I might say that one's off track. Let's drop that to the issues list. And then I can work with my team to figure out how to get my rock back on track. So that's kind of my closing comment, Robert, is that, you know, having this process, this procedure for IDSing, if you're a team of one, go have a clarity break. If you're a team of three, if you're a team of, I was with a team of 8 last week, and we followed the same process. We dedicate time to IDS together in those teams. And so that's my big recommendation for everybody. Do it regularly, and you will find that over time, number one, you and your team are going to get a lot better at identifying, discussing, and really solving problems, and not getting stuck in discuss mode that everybody gets frustrated with. When everybody is actually taking action and you're holding each other accountable with a to-do. By the way, that's another thing that you review in your weekly meeting is, did everybody get their to-dos to done this week? And if people didn't get their to-do to done, then that's another thing that we might drop down to the issues list. So you can see, we're just kind of, everything we do in our business is processing issues. And I hope that that's a helpful tool and a helpful discipline for you to think about in your business.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Chris, for the closing comments. We appreciate the presentation today. Great information. For the attendees, this information is recorded and will be posted on our website. So you can go back and review if you want. The presentation itself, the slide deck, will also be shared on the website. So please feel free to go to the Small Business Bootcamp website and review that materials, review previous sessions, or register for the upcoming sessions. And we look forward to having everybody here again tomorrow for our PPP session. We're excited about that one. And we're going to go ahead and wrap up at this time. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Great. Thanks, everybody.